Don't know if we're loading, if we're ready. I'm not used to doing live. Okay, there we are. We are live. Hello, hello, my beautiful souls. This is Amanda Trombley, your crazy coach lady. And I am so excited to get started with you guys here. So we gave you a little bit of an intro yesterday to give you an insight into exactly what we're going to be doing over the next few days. And today is part 1. So let me know when you're here. Drop a comment below. Give me your thoughts. Please participate in everything that's happening here. Clue me in to exactly what you need and what you're struggling with and exactly how we can make this live stream, this intensive, more useful to you. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. We are titling our part 1 to our Rise Up series, Opening the Portal to Mental Wealth Consciousness. And we're starting right here for one very important reason, and that is so many of us are actually closed off to the ability of our own wealthy consciousness. And so before we begin to dive in and create a better mindset, therefore creating a better life, we have to start with becoming open to receiving this as truth. So, to really simply put that, in order to achieve anything, but ultimately our greatest desires, we must first be available to receive. And moving through our lifetimes, and our experiences, we have so much so cut ourselves off from our own ability to receive due to our blocks, due to our trauma, due to our literal locking out our intuition, our lack of trust with ourselves and the world around us. And so before we can begin to turn our life upside down and really begin to create not only our physical life, but the mental life that we desire, we have to begin by being clear and open about exactly where we are blocked. So our point of this video is for you to answer this question. Is your philosophy for life greater than or with and equal to an alignment that allows you to create your emotional goals? So I'm going to repeat that question one more time and take notes, write it down, because ultimately this is the work that you're going to be doing because you want to be able to answer this question to see whether or not your portal is open and what work exactly you need to do to get it there. So, one more time. Is your philosophy to life greater than or equal to so you can find alignment with your emotional goals? So we're going to dig into what those things are. Now, number 1, emotional goals. We all want more money. We all want better sex. We all want quieter children. We all want less stress. We all want a fancier, bigger house, so on and so forth. But the problem with all of these goals and the reality that so many of us have faced is if these are the goals we are achieving or going after or trying to achieve, they do not necessarily fill the void within us. And so the reason why this is your emotional goals is because that is really where it begins. And ultimately, it's where it begins, but it's also the end result. We think the end result is the bigger car or the fancier house, but the end result is the freedom within our soul. But that is just as that is the end result, that is also the beginning result. And so often we go after the fancy car, the promotion, the this or the that, to get this unconscious desire for our emotional wealth. But we can just knock that shit out of the water and begin right where we're supposed to, with aligning our desires to our emotional goals. And so emotion here is truly the focus. But the beautiful thing about creating a consciousness that requires you to live in a state of mental wealth means that you will be wealthy, you will be abundant, and you will receive in all areas. So it starts off as a catch-20-20, but it truly ends up being the way to your desires of less than or of material things. So, philosophy for life. If you've followed me for a while or you know who I am, you know that I am constantly talking about your philosophy for life. And I want to really make this clear here in this intensive that this is going to be the last series that I hone in and speak about the philosophy for life, because it's time for my business and for my following to grow above this mid-level course and really begin to rise into the next level. So, but the philosophy for life, it's important. I talk about it in everything, and that is because your philosophy for life is the way in which you live. And most of us just go about our day-to-day lives without any plan, without any awareness, without any concrete management. And that is because we lack a philosophy for life. And if we are not disciplined in what we choose to be as our philosophy for life, we will not create a mental wealth consciousness. So your philosophy for life is your set of disciplines, your set of beliefs, your set of values, and your set of behaviors that create the life that you live day to day. And if right off the money you can't tell me what your philosophy for life is, it's because you have either a weak one or an attachment to a bad one. And so we really want to dig into this and tear that apart, because we want to get rid of any attachment to a negative cycle, or we want to create a cycle, a positive cycle itself. So let's go ahead and let's jump right into it as far as how do we figure out what our philosophy for life is? How do we figure out if we are currently living, if our portal is currently open to create this mental wealth consciousness? So the first thing here that I want to bring to you is that the majority of us have a denial of our true existence or the certain paradigm that we live in right here and now. Too many of us are living in this sheath over our face, either believing that we don't do enough or pushing ourselves to the edge, aiming for something that we don't actually want. And so it is this denial of the way that we are living in our current existence that's keeping us blocked from opening our portal. And so we have to begin to pull this cover off of not only ourselves, but off of our lives and our communities to be able to open the portal to mental wealth consciousness. Now with this is another type of attachment here. You either have the denial of the existence of your current reality, your current desires, your current blocks, or you have an unconscious denial, an unconscious acceptance, an unconscious relationship with your attachment to your misery, with your attachment to yourself, to your pain, and to your story. And although none of us really like to admit this, I can tell you more times than not, the women that I'm working with, although we're shouting from the rooftops that what we really desire is to have peace of mind and acceptance, self-acceptance and love and abundance and so on and so forth, are really, really attached to and in love with living in the shame cycle that they've created for themselves and that has been induced onto them by the societal culture and their experiences in this life. And so we have our denial to our current reality, which is what we're doing isn't working. And then we also have our denial to our unconscious reality, which is this attachment to the to the actual negative cycle that we've created for ourselves or that we've allowed to become victim to. And so if your portal is closed, or if you're here, I'm going to go ahead and assume that your portal is partially closed, or you're super duper interested into opening this portal more and being able to have the tools to create your mental wealth consciousness, then we need to settle upon these two realities: the denial of the existence of our current reality and the denial of the existence of our unconscious reality, that shame cycle repeating itself again and again. The next thing that is so super duper important when it comes to rising up and creating this wealthy consciousness is the awareness of your shadow self. This goes hand in hand with that unconscious reality that we are living with. And so we must become aware and present in the moment with our shadow self, which is accepting, is first becoming aware, but then beginning to accept and acknowledge that there is that shame cycle within us that we actually find pleasure in. And then the other side of becoming aware and opening up to our shadow self is opening up to the fact that our shadow self is truly pleasurable in a lot of ways that we don't allow ourselves to feel. And so this is super duper important. You have two different paradigms here. You have your shadow self that is this negative, wimpy self that you live in most of the time, that you're extremely attached to, but don't want to admit that you're stuck living in it, or don't actually want to admit that you're attached to this cycle, and that somewhere unconsciously you're actually seeking the pleasure through this cycle. And then B, the other side of that is that you've completely locked yourself away from actually finding the pleasure in the powerful parts of your shadow. Because your shadow is power. There is something kinky and lustery and lovely about our shadow self. There's a true power within this. And I think as women, we've really been shamed into believing that this part of ourselves should be something that's pushed down or locked away. Or if we weren't pushed into believing that, it's just something that we don't feel comfortable sitting in. And so once we begin to see the denial of our existence and our current reality and our unconscious reality, we then have to begin to become aware of the pleasure we find in our wimpy self and the pleasure we've yet to find in our darker, more powerful self. When we have opened our eyes up to these things, we can begin to create the ability to receive. When we can begin to take an honest appraisal of ourselves, we have truly completed the first step to self-mastery. When we can begin to take this honest appraisal of ourselves, we can then see exactly what is next for you. We can then begin to have the ability to create the foundations that allow exactly what we desire to have in our lives and allow us to begin to receive these things. And so if you're listening to our denial and our awareness and our ability, and somewhere along the way you're thinking, I'm a little lost here, or I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about here, or I think I resonate with this here, or that kind of sounds like me, you've answered your question that your portal is currently closed. And we have to begin to, reveal who we are and become consciously aware of the container inside of us so that we can begin to create the exact foundations that we need to increase our ability to receive, to open up and create this portal which we are so desiring to have. So, when it comes to creating your portal, there is three things here that you can't live without. Number one, your philosophy to motivation is a major setback or a major positive in your life. And there's a good chance if you're here right now, that relationship to motivation itself is a setback in your life. That relationship is something that you have allowed to rule over you and create a wimpy consciousness, a victim consciousness, a I can't move consciousness, a I'm unable to consciousness again and again. And what happens here is when we reaffirm this relationship to or a tie to motivation, to this wimpy energy, we continue to spiral in this case. And we ultimately begin to hypnotize ourselves as we repeat the same pattern mentally and physically again and again. So number one, that relationship to motivation is a gigantic, huge thing. And for me personally, it's exactly what changed my life. It was the first step to changing everything. And that's why in every single program that I have given out over the last few years, your motivation to life, your philosophy to motivation is the first thing I always speak on, because I truly and utterly believe if you're not very clear on how motivation plays a huge role in your divine being, in your behavior, in your relationship to life, if you are not very clear on what that relationship is, then you don't have a strong foundation for success. So the second thing here is your standards. Your relationship to your standards in life is just as important as your relationship to your motivation in life. We'd naturally think that we have fairly good standards in our life, except for most of my clients come to me having no idea what a boundary is or how to set them, not eating healthy or exercising regularly, not participating in a job that they love or having any passions in their life, not speaking to their children the way that they wish that they would, not having a relationship that they desire, not having the amount of money in their bank account that they desire, so on and so forth. And truly what that tells me is, although we'd like to believe we have good standards in our life, we're clean, we're moving forward, we're honest, we have integrity, so on and so forth, those realities within your life are clear indications that your standards for your soul are really, really low. And if our standards for our soul are really, really low, there's absolutely no reason why we should be surprised by our hot mess. There's no reason, because if our standards for our soul are low, then absolutely nothing positive can come from this low, wimpy energy. And so just as important as it is to define your relationship to motivation, it is so super duper important to look at the standards you have set for your life. Because your reality is a representation of your standards. That's just the truth. Your reality is a representation of your standards. And if your reality doesn't measure up to what you initially believed your standards to be, there's a massive gap there. And that's where that massive gap between the standards that we thought we held for our soul, our mind, our body, our lives, and the reality that we're living in explains the importance of the third principle, which is that philosophy to life. Our philosophy for life includes it all. What our philosophy, our relationship with our behavior, our relationship with our actions, our relationship with our principles, our discipline, our spiritual practices, so on and so forth. And so when it comes to looking at our standards, if we are seeing that gap between the standards that we at once believed what we lived up to or what we desire to have and the reality that we are in currently, it's a clear indication that our philosophy to life itself is screwed up. And it's time to turn it around, shake the ground, and begin to implement a philosophy for life. Begin to implement the specific disciplines that we need, the specific beliefs, the specific patterns, so on and so forth, that will allow us to live out standards that create a new reality, that are constantly pushing us forward to an evolutionary space that only allows a consciousness or a state of mind of mental wealth to increase and grow from here. So, we have to begin once again with those aspects of denial in our lives. Where are we unintentionally sabotaging ourselves due to an unconscious desire for pain and shame? Where are we unintentionally sabotaging ourselves due to the inability to consciously feel in to those hidden, dark, sexy pleasures that we have? Where are we so afraid of the ability to believe? Where are we so locked away from our ability to create that we have fallen upon the life that we are living now? Next, what can we do about it? Where is our philosophy to motivation itself becoming a harm in our life? How does that set us up to have shitty soul standards that continuously take us down this trapping cycle? And how does the motivation and the standards create a philosophy for life that we don't like? Once we can actually, truly, honestly ask ourselves those questions, we can begin to answer the ultimate question of this intensive today of, is my philosophy for life greater than or equal to in its ability to create my emotional goals? And there's a good chance after listening and after thinking that you've fallen on this reality that no, it's not. My philosophy for life is shitty. And that's exactly why I'm here. That's exactly why I need to do something different. And so your philosophy for life is a really simple thing. It's an easy paradigm shift. Although it seems complicated and it seems overwhelming, it boils down to resetting your relationship to motivation and falling upon something that you love that serves you. It boils down to looking at those soul standards and picking ones that actually serve you, that you're capable of holding yourself up to without falling back into that shame cycle. It's looking at those standards and saying, where do I want to soak in to that pleasure in my life, and how am I going to create it? And then it's creating a set of disciplines, practices, and a way of living that can actually open you up to the portal that you are desiring to be at. There's so many big words here. There's so many fancy titles here. But at the end of the day, it's all about looking at 3 simple things and asking yourself what the truth is. Where are you at? Where do you want to be? And what is it actually going to take to get there? And what it's actually going to take to get there looks very different for each and every one of us. My philosophy for life is going to look different than yours, and mine has grown time and time again. I'm going to close up in just a few minutes because I think you guys have quite a bit of information to journal on, to go on, and to figure out exactly what you want in this life, and the first opening to figure out what you need to begin to switch in your core beliefs to create it. But I want to leave you with this. This little story here, this little theory here of mine is what has changed my life, and it's what I've used with every single client, large or small, that I have worked with, because this was the starting point for me. It carried on to so much more. But truly and totally, the woman that I was 5, 6 years ago is a completely unrecognizable woman. Because who I was living in those moments were, I was attached to a different set of life standards. I was attached to a different philosophy for life. And as I began to dig into myself and define my relationship to motivation, which what I found out is that motivation is shit and there's no such thing, it began to change the way I behaved. And as I began to behave differently, day in, day out, acting on logic-based reactions rather than emotional feelings in the moment, I began to take small, manageable steps that changed the trajectory of my life. And I have got to tell you, it's scary business because I didn't think that this is where I would be. If you would have asked me 5 or 6 years ago, is this the life that I had planned? I would have told you no way. Not that I'm living a bad one, but I'm living a completely different one. My desires, my dreams, and my divine nature is completely different than who I was at one point. And God bless my husband for being with someone completely different than the woman he married, because that is the truth. My life has changed by coming into acceptance of my denial of existence of the reality I was living in. My life has changed by becoming aware of my attachment to the pleasure that I found in negative cycles in my life. My life has changed by coming aware to the pleasures that I was locking myself away from because I was too scared to admit they were for me. My life has changed by becoming available to receive. My life has changed by recoding my truth and creating a new philosophy for my life, my beings, my standards, my behaviors, my beliefs, my core, my everything. And I promise you that if you take the time and you journal this out and you give yourself that moment of self-mastery where you're looking in with an open mind, releasing the shame, not feeling it, just taking an honest appraisal of yourself, you will begin to open up your own portal to mental wealth consciousness. So before we go, I want to talk about 2 things with you because I am excited, and of course this intensive is leading to something greater and bigger and better. Now again, what I said before is true. This intensive, this series of Rise Up, of Mental Wealth Rise Up, is going to be the last of its kind. I'm going to be transitioning in the next 6 months to a business course for the mentally or the creatively maladjusted that I've had on the back burner for so long, and it's time to stop putting my feet down and just get that shit out in the world because it's so needed, because those of us that do have mental health issues or are not awakened yet can't just jump into this entrepreneur world and get started. So that this in the next few months, that is something that will be coming out, which is a completely different shift than about 85% of what I've put out. But in the course of that creation, I'm going to be shifting Ignite as a whole to a higher level self-mastery. We're going to be moving away from the basics and creating the divinity inside ourselves. And so if you're not there yet, if you are at this beginner level, this series and what is to follow is for you because it's going to be the last of its kind for Ignite. It's going to be the last type of this beginning to mid-level series that I do. And there's nothing wrong with being there. We all start there. But it's time for me to move on. So I'm pouring my heart and soul and every little piece of everything that I've put out in the last few years into Mental Wealth Rise Up. Right here we have our Rise Up, which is our mental wealth consciousness, which is going to be this 3-part free intensive series, and it is going to rock, you guys. But coming from here, we're going to have 2 different options to work on me and work with me in a much deeper capacity on all of these topics. We're going to have our masterclass, which is a 2-hour session with me where we are going to dive into you and exactly what this looks like with writing and crying and really truly transformational conversation on exactly what this looks like for you. Not what this looks like for the collective, but exactly what your new you looks like. If you're participating in Rise Up right now, you actually get this for $88 off, which brings our masterclass 2 hours with me down to $111. So that's a gigantic steal, and you're going to walk away with the 6 principles, the 6 foundations to turn your life upside down and not just open that portal, but step right into it and begin receiving, and feeling the goodness of your soul and living out in your truest nature and power. The second way that you can take Rise Up to the next level and really create something for yourself and with me is our Master Code course. This is going to be a multi-module course. We're going to dive in through video coaching, heal your shit system, journal prompts, insight writings, and all kinds of good stuff to make sure that you walk away from this never needing this foundational to mid-level type of stuff again. The beautiful thing about this type of work is once it's in, it's in. And if we do the work to cement it, we get to move from it. We might take 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards, but we never have to learn the same lesson again because we've done the work to clear out the energy and create the space for us. And so our Master Code course, again, is going to be a multi-module course. We're going to get super nitty-gritty. You're going to have the availability to have me one-on-one through coaching and all sorts of goodness for you in writing, in journal prompts, insight writings, and of course, my transformational favorite thing ever, Heal Your Shit Systems. And again, if you're in Rise Up right now, you get a deal on this as well. So your Master Code course, if you choose to do that, is only going to be $289, which is a little over $100 deal and a complete steal, even at its original price, a total and complete steal. But for those of you that are showing me here and now that you want to begin to do this transformational work and you're committed and you're moving forward, we're going to give you an even killer deal. So both Masterclass and Master Code, I want you to stay in there before you get too excited about moving on and finding something bigger and deeper. I want you to stay here with Rise Up, and I want you to see if this is for you, if this is really what you are needing in your life right now, and if this is the portal for creating consciousness for yourself. If it is, then the cart is open for both the Master Class and the Master Code. We can schedule your Master Class whenever you are ready, and our Master Code course will begin in the next few weeks. I don't have a specific date for that because I kind of fly by the seat of my hat. So that is all I have for you guys. You guys have some serious questions to think over, to journal over, and to decide exactly if how you're living what you believe is the direct path to get you where you want to go. And then you have those insights so you can take it to the next level to recode this truth and create a philosophy for life that is perfect for you. That's all I have for you guys on this one. I'm going to give y'all tonight and another day to journal on this, to think on this, to watch this video, to catch the replay, to watch it again, to pause it, to write, to so on and so forth. And then we will get started on our second part of Rise Up. Again, if you have any questions, just comment them below or feel free to reach out. I'm a real person. I just recently had somebody tell me the other day, oh, I didn't know you were a real person. I just thought you were all business. And that is the second person that said that. So I'm a real person. Reach out 100%. Ask me your questions. Let's do this together. Let's change our lives. Let's rise up. Let's create mental wealth consciousness. And let's begin by opening that portal. I cannot wait to hear your responses. I cannot wait to talk to each and every one of you. And I will see you guys back here in 2 days for part 2. That's it.